We're going to be talking about el subjuntivo, the subjunctive mood. Nuestro amigo del año pasado, our friend from last year. You did work with subjunctive mood a lot in Spanish 3. This will be a continuation. I hope you enjoyed the flamenco performance. So let's talk about what we remember from last year, and as we are reviewing Formación del Subjuntivo, use the note-taking sheet to write down whatever you would need to help you remember. So when we talk about Formación del Subjuntivo, formation of the subjunctive mood, we had 3 steps that we worked with back in Spanish 3. That will not change. Empieza con la forma de yo, so always begin with the yo form of any given verb, no matter if it's a regular or an irregular verb, that's your starting point. Quita la terminación, so take away the o ending. Añade las terminaciones opuestas, add the opposite vowel endings. So as we're looking at the verb hablar, you'll see, knowing that it's an AR verb, that we've started with hablo, we've taken away the O to find the stem, and then added what we call the opposite vowels. So take a look at these endings. You see E's all the way through, even though hablar is an AR verb. On your note-taking sheet, take a minute to put down, so pause the video, put down the meanings, or not the meanings, I'm sorry, the forms of the verb comer as an example and a reminder for yourself about formation of subjunctive mood. I said we'd talk a little about flamenco at the same time, and so as we're looking at this beautiful picture from a corral in Barcelona or Madrid. Anyway, this would have been a student group that had come from Oakmont and watched this performance with these wonderful flamenco dancers. And when we talk about flamenco, just a couple of quick things. It is an art, it's very much a part of Spanish culture, but the visual effect of flamenco is as important as anything else. And when people talk about flamenco, they are typically talking about 3 different forms of flamenco. There is the song, okay, the singing piece, baile, the dancing piece, and guitarra, the music piece. And so when we listen to and watch flamenco performance, you hear all 3. Gypsies are often named as the fathers of flamenco, and so when we talk about gypsy influence in Spain, that is very much a part of the culture. And a lot of the popular music of Andalusia in the south of Spain has influenced flamenco. So flamenco being an art form that, although yes, you would go and watch it specifically on a stage, it also is very much a part of everyday life for Spanish people. Okay, so back to how we used subjunctive in the past. Se usó el subjuntivo. So subjunctive was used for us in noun clauses, cláusulas sustantivas, they're called. And in the noun clause, we found the subjunctive mood. The noun clause starts with que, remember from last year. If the first clause of your sentence had a very specific expression, and here was the acronym we often use to remind ourselves of what those expressions looked like. And we talked about expressions of wishing or wanting. We talked about impersonal expressions, expressions of doubt, disbelief, or denial, and then emotion, always about what someone else was doing, and then using the subjunctive in our secondary clause, in the K clause, if you will. That's just to help you, a little jog of your memory about what we did so much last year in Spanish 3. It was a year and a half ago for some of you. But as we're looking at an example of a sentence that does have subjunctive mood, look at this one, es impresionante. So we've got an impersonal expression right at the beginning of the sentence, es impresionante. And what's impressive? Impresionante, que bailen, that they dance with elegancia, con elegancia. So bailen being in the subjunctive mood. And looking at the dancers, you can see the passion certainly in the faces and in the movements, in the body posture, and in the accompaniment in the background. So that structure of that sentence does contain an impersonal expression with a K clause. Now we're going to be talking about using el subjuntivo, subjunctive, in something called adverbial clauses, cláusulas adverbiales. So this will be a little bit different. They're not going to start with que. Before we start talking about adverbial clauses, a quick comment about, well, what is an adverb? So adverbs. Adverbs modify verbs or other adverbs, and they usually give information about the degree or the manner in which something is done. And so if I look at this example about dancing, which you can almost see, baila apasionadamente. Apasionadamente would be an example of a very simple adverb. He dances passionately, or she in this case dances passionately. So passionately ending with ly in English, mente in Spanish, is a really common form for an adverb. It gives information about how something's done, how, in this case, how she dances. If we look at adverbial clauses, which would be an adverb essentially turned into a group of words with the subjunctive mood, we're going to be talking about and looking at conjunctions. So the conjunctions, expressions that help us with information about how things are done, if they imply doubt, uncertainty, indefiniteness, anticipation, well, then you are going to be following them with subjunctive mood. Take a look at this example sentence. Baila energéticamente, he dances energetically. Con tal que is an example of what we're talking about. This is a conjunction. Provided that el grupo lo anime. So here we've got the group, and their responsibility is to animate the dancer or to, encourage the dancer. And so, yes, he dances energetically provided that the group encourages him. So this is in the subjunctive. Animar is an AR verb. This con tal que introduces this piece of the sentence that tells how he dances. Okay, so it does modify the dancing or the energetically piece. And looking at con tal que for the first time, it is an example of a whole group of conjunctions that you're going to work with. Here they are. Okay, so adverbial conjunctions. We again can look at an acronym to remind ourselves of which ones always require subjunctive mood. They are in the acronym escapa a. Escape to. All right, so the first being en caso de que. En caso de que means in case, and it is always followed by a verb that's in the subjunctive mood. Sin que means without, always followed by a verb in subjunctive mood. Con tal que, provided that. A fin de que, provided that. Para que, so that. A menos que, unless. Antes de que, before. Look at these sample sentences. I will finish a fin de que tenga tiempo, as long as or provided that I have time. Salgo a menos que is one of these conjunctions. I'm leaving unless me quieras aquí. You want me here. This is in the subjunctive, so the verb after the expression is in the subjunctive. Voy sin que mi mamá lo sepa. I'm going without my mom knowing it. So again, sepa from saber is subjunctive. All three of these conjunctions are contained in this escapa a acronym, and all three of them require the use of subjunctive mood. There are other conjunctions that are not in escapa a, and the other grouping of conjunctions may or may not imply doubt or certainty. They may imply one or the other, so you have to be the person who chooses whether or not to use subjunctive after them. Let's take a look at the list of conjunctions for which you have to make the decision. Aunque, although, cuando, when, de manera que, in such a way that, de modo que, in such a way that, después de que, after, en cuanto, as soon as, luego que, as soon as, tan pronto como, as soon as, así que, as soon as. So 4 of them mean the same thing. Hasta que, until, and mientras, while. These are examples of conjunctions that may or may not be followed by subjunctive. Here are some examples side by side. If I look at the subjunctive, aunque baile esta noche, no quiero ir porque no aprecio el flamenco. Looking at baile in the subjunctive mood after aunque, I would translate something like this. Although he's dancing tonight, I don't want to go because I don't appreciate flamenco. So this piece, although he's dancing, I think, okay, compared to this. Aunque baila bien, no quiero ver el espectáculo. Although he dances well, I don't want to see the spectacle. So again, the two sentences look so similar to each other, but in this one, because of the use of subjunctive after aunque, I know there's some uncertainty or anticipation, so it could be something like, even although he might be dancing tonight, implied by the use of subjunctive. Look at cuando in this pairing of sentences. So in this one, we do find subjunctive. Cuando oiga la música, la va a gustar. When you hear the music, you're going to like it. You haven't heard the music yet, so oiga in the subjunctive mood after cuando, anticipating something, compared to this. Cuando el muchacho oye la música, canta. When the boy hears the music, he sings. That always happens that way, so there's no subjunctive here with oye, because when he hears it, that's what he does. Look at the third pairing. Espere hasta que venga al restaurante. Well, in this case, it's a command form. So wait until he comes to the restaurant. You're not sure when he's going to come, so until he comes. Uncertain action compared to, what does she do? Ella espera hasta que viene cada noche. She waits until he comes each night. So with cada noche especially, that implies, oh, that's what she always does. So there's no uncertainty about it. Okay, so even though the sentences, once again, if you look at the pairing of sentences, they look so similar, the sentences on the left imply something uncertain or anticipated, yet to happen. Take a look at our review. We've talked about the subjunctive in noun clauses, the way you learned to work with subjunctive last year. We worked with the acronym WID or E, so that we could separate the two clauses and look for the two different subjects and then introduce the K clause. And that's the work we did last year with those very specific kinds of expressions. And now we talk about adverbial clauses, again with a very specific conjunction with, a very specific group of conjunctions that will always require us to use subjunctive. Or with other kinds of conjunctions where we're going to have to make that decision based on what we're saying. So if we're implying uncertainty, indefiniteness, or anticipation, then we know those kinds of things always require subjunctive mood. And that's when we make the decision. I know that looks really nice, doesn't it? With these specific ones, again, in the escapa a, we can be assured, when we use subjunctive. And so here we have a few views of some more flamenco scenes. Look at this gentleman's hair. By the time he's done dancing, it's really pretty raggedy. But he's been really working. It's quite a workout, so he's very sweaty. And as you said, they dance so passionately with so much energy. And the blurring hands, and the movement you can see in those still films. So I hope you've learned something about flamenco, but also something about working with the subjunctive mood in adverb clauses. We'll practice more of these in class tomorrow, so come ready with your questions. Try the few examples that are on your note-taking sheet and make sure that's all the way filled in. Watch this presentation a couple of times if you need to. Okay, hasta mañana. Dance. Ok, es chévere que puedas comprender todo, aunque sea un poco difícil a veces. Here's a nice complicated sentence. Es chévere, great expression. That means it's cool. So what's cool? That's an impersonal expression with a K clause. Well, it's cool that you can understand everything. Puedas in the subjunctivo. And then if we continue this sentence with a clause, aunque introduced by conjunction, sella, un poco difícil a veces, subjuntivo, subjunctive, I translate as although it may be a bit difficult at times. So with aunque, a conjunction where I make the decision, based on what it is I want to say to you. So if I want to imply some uncertainty or some doubt, then I'll use subjunctive after aunque. All right, and here our last comment. Tienes que verlo para que puedas gustar el flamenco. Vale, gracias. Hasta mañana.